Welcome to another episode of the MBA Success Stories. Today, I have a special guest with me who's had, surprisingly, a tremendous amount of success and a great track record of gutsy calls of letting go of many of those great MBA scholarships that she's gotten to choose one that she believes anchors her to her long-term goals. Welcome, Aishwarya. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Aishwarya, before I talk about the actual MBA applications itself, you've managed to convert this also into somewhat of a COVID relief advisory, where a lot of people have approached you. I saw the success you've got. I just saw that you posted 1.3 lakhs in total donations just from advisory. That's incredible. Congratulations to you, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
But the bedrock of all of this success is two key factors. That we want to talk about in terms of your MBA applications, your ISB Young Leaders Program. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but the YLP prestigious program where you got in even before you proved yourself in the work arena. And last year, you got into multiple schools, of which you have chosen to go to Yale, given your background and your professional aspirations. Congratulations. Why don't we start at the top? Let's talk about what prompted you to apply to ISB back in 2016 when you graduated from Vellore Institute of Technology.
All right. I've had a pretty unconventional trajectory professionally. So unlike most people who apply to the ISB YLP in their pre-final year, I was one of those people that applied in my final year. Mine was the first year that ISB allowed students in their final year of college to apply for the YLP program as well. So I'd made a pretty unconventional shift by that time. I'd decided that post-engineering, I wasn't going to take any placements off campus. Instead, I was going to act on a very long-held passion for social impact and join a program in Delhi that enabled me to be a research assistant to a member of parliament.
Okay.
So because I was getting into an unfamiliar realm in terms of being in governance and policy, for me, it felt like an MBA. I've always seen an MBA as a degree that helps you diversify your options as you go forward.
Yeah.
It's a very safe professional degree that people from diverse backgrounds can just go and fit right into and have a very good career afterwards.
Yeah.
So because I was taking a huge risk by joining a sector that was extremely nascent in India at that time, applying for a prestigious MBA program was my way of hedging my professional success. So it was just this that motivated my application to the ISB YLP program. And I specifically chose ISB over the IIMs because I felt like of all the programs that India has to offer, ISB offers the most holistic experience.
Yep.
I felt like they also bring in the most diverse classes. So me being from an unconventional background, I never had doubts that I'd fit into that classroom. And that's why I applied.
That's the, I mean, perhaps you made unconventional decisions even way back when you were a child. I probably need to ask your parents about this someday. But that started the first unconventional decision you made. Why don't we just make this a teaching point for students who are going to listen to and want to apply to ISB YLP, right? So the application process is you first submit your essay, first submit your resume, and then I think your GMAT score as well, where they then consider you and evaluate you, and then you're asked to submit essays in multiple stages. Is that correct?
Right. I submitted my GRE score in the second level, though, not in the first level, but otherwise, yes, perfect.
Got it. So in stage one, one of the questions was, what more would you like ISB to know about your candidature? This is after they've seen your resume. This is after they've seen that, all right, you're going to make an unconventional turn into a different work arena than most engineers.
Right.
What did you communicate in the stage one of the essay, and how did you break down your response?
Absolutely. Like most people coming from a social impact background, I knew that ISB might have some concerns about how somebody from a very policy background fits into a very private sector oriented business school. So I actually chose to address that within this essay so that any doubts that they have regarding my motivations are mitigated right away. So I showed them a very vulnerable side of myself, I'd say. I spoke about my motivations.
Got it.
I told them the true story of why I care so much about social impact. My father is a cancer surgeon, and he's worked very long hours ever since I was a child on curing cancer in poor patients. And that's pretty much what motivated me. And I thought it was important for them to know that, because I thought it was one of the best things about myself that goes beyond what I put on my resume in terms of my extracurriculars or my GPA or the work that I was doing. I felt like this was an entirely different dimension that might help them understand why I've made the choices that I've made. So I spoke about that in the first part of the essay. And in the second part, I showed them a little bit about what I intend to do in the long term, perhaps, showing them that there was a vision that ties to an MBA. So I'd spoken about
And that's for the
wanting to
short-term and
start.
long-term essay part of stage 2, right? Or just in
I
the
do.
stage 1 essay itself?
In stage 1 itself, I
Interesting.
gave them a
Okay.
little bit
Go
of an
ahead.
indication of what I want to do with the degree, so that I seem like a more natural fit, which of
Okay.
course I worked upon and developed upon and added a lot more detail to in the stage 2 essay on short and long-term goals. But that's
Understood.
pretty much what I showed them in the first essay, because I wanted to hook them onto my personality and show them that I belong there.
Understood. Okay, then stage 2. Stage 2, you made this pretty great connection in stage 1 where you've connected it even to your personal story. Most Indians, by the way, fail to do that. We always think that applications to business school have to be business and professional oriented and not often connected to some of these personal background or vulnerabilities, which I think you did extremely well. Stage 2, the essay 1 was tell us about your short-term and long-term goals. How were you thinking about it back then? What was the clarity you had as a recently graduated undergrad who was thinking about applying to or possibly doing something useful in your career after the ISB MBA?
Absolutely. So I knew that whatever I pursue after the MBA will have to be businessy in some element, for the lack of a better word, so
Yeah.
that the experience at ISB was well leveraged. So I'll talk to you about what I said about the long-term goal first.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was working on the Member of Parliament research program. It was called the LAMP Fellowship, and it was run by one of the most reputed think tanks in India.
Okay.
But at that point, I'd seen that a lot of the impactful work that that think tank was doing around building awareness around policy, unfortunately, isn't very accessible to people at the grassroots, because they don't, they probably don't follow English. They probably don't use the internet.
Understood.
So given these reasons, I, at that point, said that my long-term goal was to start a think tank of my own that works more in vernacular mediums and pays specific attention to dissemination of policy awareness to the ground level.
Understood.
So what I consciously did there was by saying that I want to start my own think tank, while the policy element of it remains intact. A think tank essentially is a business, which, despite operating on a non-profit model, it is a company that still requires you to have business skills in order to run it. So that's what I'd said was my long-term goal. In terms of the short term, and here I believe I may have made a little bit of a mistake because I was grilled about it in my interview. I said I want to continue working in the policy space to become better as a policy professional, and maybe also observe established think tanks from a business standpoint in terms of how they run their business.
Understood.
That said, I don't think it was the most convincing short-term goal to give out, because essentially the skills required on that job are policy skills. They aren't necessarily business
skills. Okay, so well, that was the crux of the question, which you explained. It perhaps your GRE score, which was pretty good, combined with your actual unconventional route, convince them sufficiently enough to say, okay, there's some merit to bringing you into the interview.
Yes.
There is one more essay question before we talk about the interview. The essay question was, please provide any additional information that you would want to be considered for the ISB application. Was there anything that you provided materially that helped make it impactful?
Yes. So since I'd covered what I'm like as a person in the first round, I chose to leverage this essay to add a few more details to certain achievements that I'd covered. So, for example, at that point, I hadn't yet mastered the art of writing my resume in a way that one sentence captures a lot of information. I felt like some things like that I'd done. For example, when I was in the debating society in college, I'd been part of the organizing committee of a national level debating tournament. And I'd put in more, I wrote it in the star story format, if I may use that jargon. I put down a couple of stories in that essay, very unrelated points. It didn't flow like an essay, but I put in 3 stories there in the quick start format, just to give them a glimpse of perhaps my leadership skills, my organizational abilities, etc. Another reason behind that was because I was working in a policy research job. I didn't get a lot of opportunity to showcase, say, my managerial abilities.
Yep.
So I thought that these stories might help ISB visualize that I have those abilities despite my professional experience by that time not having the scope to reflect it.
That's actually really, and this I told you off the air before we began the interview. For a person who was just graduated at 20 or 21, doing this by yourself and being able to think quite logically in that to say, hey, there's something that is left unaddressed that perhaps needs to be, and I can borrow from the work that I've done either in the English Literature Association or the Debate Society as a part of your university, and using that to showcase those abilities and skills is quite exceptional. I have no doubt that set a good track record of why you've been so successful all throughout in multiple essays and applications throughout your journey. Before we go to Yale, tell me about the interview. How did you address when you were grilled by the ISB panel to say, why would you want to work in policy right after ISB?
Got it. So unlike the interviews with US business schools that I'd given, which generally tend to be very structured and very behavioral,
yeah,
I found the ISB interview fairly unstructured. They asked the right questions and they asked several follow-up questions.
Yeah.
So it started in a pretty routine manner where they asked me to revisit my short and my long-term goals and why ISB.
Yeah.
And there, of course, I'd done my homework. I'd done a lot of in-depth research about the school, about what courses and professors that I'm excited to take and study. And I'd interacted with a few students who had already gone there. So while I thought I was able to handle that fairly well because of the research that I'd done, I still think that the red flag in their mind vis-a-vis my policy background continued to remain, which is why they asked me a lot of follow-up questions around it, generally around the theme of, we're not sure as a business school what we can do for you specifically.
Yeah. What's the value add that ISB will
absolutely.
have to already get you from a career path of where you are to where you want to be? Because it seems fairly linear. Why do you want ISB as a part of this? Right? They'll poke holes at it. Yeah. How did you address that?
Absolutely. I don't think I was as structured as I was in the first part of the interview. But again, I always believe that part of the MBA interview also requires you to be spontaneous. So I was very spontaneous in that moment. I spoke about how several members of the leadership of several think tanks that are doing well in India are all MBAs. So the think tank that I was working for was led by somebody who had gone to IIM Calcutta himself. So I also spoke about specific attributes that I'd observed in him that come more from his management education and not his experience as being a policy professional.
Yeah.
So with this, I tried to establish how the business and the management side of the skill is something that my work experience cannot equip me with.
Wow.
So I think that was one part of it. But then again, because they were specifically asking me what ISB could do for them, I'd done some research in that regard, and I'd seen that ISB had actually placed several members of their past cohort in the Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister's Vision Management Unit at that point. It was a pretty big press release, and thankfully, because I'm from Telangana myself, it was in the news. And just being able to throw that fact back at them and tell them that since you helped these people, I'm very convinced that you can do something for me as well. And that I'm fairly confident that the diversity of ISB's cohort also makes sure that their placement record can be equally diverse. I think that did the trick for me, along with a lot of confidence in just the manner that I was delivering the answers. I think that also helped them believe that I'd figured it all out.
Hey, it's all that debate society experience, I'm telling you. It is extremely useful. A partner of mine at McKinsey used to tell the analysts, because in client presentations, my gravitas was pretty good. So he used to tell the analysts, hey, I think you need to do theater just like Ashwin did. Right. So that had zero to contribute to it, but it had some confidence that I could fake my way through some of those presentations, I suppose. But yes. While a lot of students have approached you for ISB YLP, is there anything that they ask you particularly that we haven't addressed for their ISB concerns?
Got it. A lot of people approach me several months before they've actually decided to apply. So I get a question around what I think they should do to enhance their profile to appear more attractive to
It's
the
too late.
admissions committee. Right. So I give them whatever advice I can in terms of, depending on how long away they are from the actual application, I advise them around, say, cultivating leadership experiences at work if they are working professionals, or maybe if they are potential YLPs, I'd advise them to maybe take leadership responsibilities within clubs that they're a
Schools.
part
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I talk about maybe getting, I guess, showcasing their community involvement, getting
Yeah.
involved with the community. I understand that there's a certain point after which it's too late, which I
Yeah.
let them know quite frankly, because I feel like they deserve that honesty as well.
Yeah.
But in case they have time, I do suggest that they get involved with the community activity in whatever capacity.
That's very nice of you to at least give them those inputs. Okay. What did you do after you received your admit? What I see that you worked in the policy space or in the think tank space for a little bit. Can you just walk us through your background briefly over the last 3 years?
Sure. Again, a couple of gutsy choices that I'd made. After a year as a policy advisor in the LAMP fellowship, I actually thought I'd give the civil services exam a crack, which
Damn. Okay.
in retrospect is probably not one of my best decisions, but I understand
Why?
that a lot of your I took a 1 year gap to prepare for the exam, which
A
personally
lot of
was quite
people
a
do.
challenge.
I've
I'm
heard a
glad
lot
it
of
seemed
people
that
do.
way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do know that.
So I spent a year doing that, and unfortunately, it didn't go the way that I wanted it to. But I knew for certain that if I couldn't crack it the first time. I didn't want to become one of those people who continued to give the exam at a significant opportunity cost of losing out on my career.
Yeah.
So I looked out for opportunities that allowed me to do what I wanted to as a civil servant.
Okay.
And that's when I chanced upon development sector consulting,
Okay.
more specifically governance consulting, where you can work with consulting firms, and your clients are usually state governments, and you support the bureaucrats with developing strategy and program managing implementation, so that you actually create social impact that reaches the ground.
And this
And
is
in
Samagra,
that,
right?
this is my stint at Samagra. So
Got it.
it's a fairly new governance consulting firm that's modeled around the way McKinsey operates, and they do amazing work with state governments in India. So it
Isn't do you know Ankur Bansal from Samagra?
yes,
This is an
yes,
off
I do.
topic. Okay, so
Yes.
this is a wild story for you. Ankur used to intern at a firm run by my college my classmate from many years ago
Uh-huh.
from undergrad,
Right.
and Ankur reached out to me. I remember way back in 2012, maybe, when he was
Mm-hmm.
interested in applying to business schools and he was considering this process. So if this is way before Samagra and he was saying, hey, this is what I wanted to do. So just out of
Sure.
curiosity, that's why I know when I see a lot of people go to Samagra, I say, okay, this guy did really well. Well done to him. But okay, so all right, continue back on your
A
story.
fun story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I spent about a year and a half there. I worked as a consultant to the state government of Andhra Pradesh and then with the state government of Odisha. It was an amazing experience because, one, from the skill development standpoint, because the firm operated like a disciplined consulting firm, I feel like I got the best out of the hard skills that consulting allows you to develop. So it was an
Hmm.
amazing experience for me. And I then shifted to the University of Chicago Trust's International Innovation Core program, which is
Hmm.
also a development sector consulting program.
Hmm.
And as part of that, I worked with the finance department of the government of Telangana. Off the back of my stint at Samagra, because I'd learned so much as part of that firm, I was able to use that to showcase leadership among equals when I was at IIC, which I feel was an amazing experience and contributed to the success of my application as well, because I was actually able to show these schools that I'm someone that can take initiative and take a team along.
See, but you had a vision after your undergrad. You followed through on what you had told you would do in your ISB applications. Congratulations. But then you came at a point where you had to give up that and consider applying to global
Yes.
universities. What was the
Yes.
thought process behind that? How did you make your decision that, okay, I'm going to give up a fairly good admit and look at what needs to be done globally?
All right. Two reasons here, and I'm going to be very candid.
Be candid,
Um,
please.
I see a lot of my friends that post engineering went to the US to do their MS. And I feel like when I look at them, the greater ROI of their MS degree, at least in my eyes, isn't how much more they're earning. It's about how they've grown as people.
Yeah.
And and that to me was amazing. And I wanted that experience for myself.
Yeah.
ISB being located in Hyderabad, which is the city that I've grown up in, I felt like perhaps
Too
I
comfortable
wanted
for you.
it was too comfortable for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And I wanted an experience of moving to another country and um, being in a class with people from different cultures, learning from the best of what they have to offer. So, that quite frankly was the first reason. The second reason had to do with ISB being a 1 year course. So, while within that 1 year, a lot of brilliant people come together at ISB and leave with extremely amazing jobs. For me, I also looked at the MBA as an academic experience and a huge personality development experience,
Yeah.
which I felt like perhaps I needed
1 year
more
is
than
just
a
not
year
enough.
to, yes,
Yeah.
I needed more than a year to indulge in it, which is why I decided to apply to the US. And that's also partly why I didn't consider European MBAs because the 2 year element was very important to me.
Fair enough. You applied last year. You applied to many schools. If you want, you can disclose the schools. Many schools, of which most of them you got scholarships, some sizable enough. But let's talk about Yale. Um,
Yeah.
what made you choose Yale? We all know, okay, so for most students listening, Yale does have a proclivity for people who have your background.
Yeah.
They comprise of a lot of, I don't want to just say social sector, but a little more unconventional uh, working backgrounds. And they do like people with that background who want to go and make an impact. What was your decision-making process behind choosing Yale among the many schools that you applied to?
Absolutely. It was a very difficult decision to make. I had, among the US schools that I applied to, I had offers from Yale, Duke, Fuqua, and Cornell, all of which had offered me scholarships. And in fact, my scholarship at Yale, at least monetarily, was the least among the three that I'd received.
Come on, Yale. What
So,
are you doing here? Come on, up this. Let's get a more scholarship.
so it was a difficult decision to make, but it came down to firstly, even though I'm open to exploring different fields of work immediately post MBA, I might get into management consulting for a while because I feel it's a very holistic experience and will enable a lot of hard skill development.
Yeah.
The heart is still in India in social impact. And that's where I want to come back, say, 4 or 5 years down the line post MBA. And given that, one, the social impact focus that Yale continues to place even as part of its MBA program,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like while I was acquiring business and management skills,
Mm-hmm.
it's always important for me to contextualize that in social impact. And for that reason, Yale's curriculum made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Second, Yale has a very integrated curriculum, and you're allowed to take electives across Yale University.
Yeah.
And I'm quite a geek in that respect, and that opportunity was very exciting to me. I want to do courses in Yale School of Drama, for example. Extremely
Hey,
exciting to
welcome
me.
to the dark side.
So, from the academic standpoint, that's why Yale was speaking to me personally. And I won't lie to you. I mean, a lot of it was also about the brand value of Yale University. It's a name that carries global recall value, and
Yeah.
especially in India, and especially in the social impact space in India, which is still a relatively new space.
Yeah.
The Yale brand. When I told people I got into Yale, the reaction was
Ooh. Ooh,
it
Yale.
spoke for itself.
Yeah.
And I felt like if I was going to come back to India and establish myself in this sector, the Yale brand name would do me a lot of service in terms of getting me the roles that I was looking for.
Hey, we need people like you to come back and do good in this country. Trust me.
Thank you so much.
I'm very privileged that you're actually going to be doing that. Let's help students now on how you worked on the Yale application itself, and then speak more generically about the US MBA application process. Yale had two essays, one essay and then a bunch of video essays. The essay that it had was describe the biggest commitment you've ever made. They have some guidance because they want to see what is it that you've done in the past, whether in personal or professional life, that you've really made a difficult choice and stuck with it, because they want to see how you'll do the same when you get into Yale and subsequent to your career post Yale. So how did you break this down? How did you respond to this question?
Got it. So the first thing that I love the prompt because it really spoke to me. It fueled a lot of introspection, to be honest. And I feel like as Indians, sometimes we are very hesitant to open up about the softer sides of ourselves.
Yep.
It's perhaps not something that we are used to doing very much in our undergrads specifically.
No.
But I realized that was something that was very important to this process. I feel like it's important to a lot of US business schools in general, not just Yale, that you also show who you are as a person. Go beyond your work achievements, what you've done extracurricularly, and those hard facts and numbers that you put on your resume, and actually show them that this is who I am, this is what matters to me.
There's a person who thinks, feels, and acts behind all of these decisions that were made. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I chose to, taking forward what I did in my ISB application, I chose to actually be very open and vulnerable as part of this essay, while at the same time maintaining the structure of the essay and making sure that all the information that I need to get out gets out. So to walk you through the structure that I used in my essay, I devoted a couple of sentences to actually talking about, so my commitment was to, because a lot of what fuels me in social impact comes from just me being a compassionate individual. I said that my commitment was to act on my compassion, and that's what led me to make difficult decisions, whether it was choosing to be in social impact or whether it was managing difficult situations during my career in social impact. So I straight out stated the commitment there, spoke about where it came from. I spoke about my parents' career treating cancer and how that influenced me as a child. I then spoke about how it was a difficult choice for me to pivot straight out of engineering college. I studied in South India, where not a lot of people have heard about the social impact space. To let go of pretty well-paying jobs and opt for a job that was honestly paying me only 20,000 rupees per month as my first role. That was a huge and very gutsy decision to make. But it was in a lot of honesty, it was my commitment and my compassion that made me make that decision. So it was very easy for me to say that because it was the honest truth. Cross my heart and swear to die. So I put that in the first paragraph, and after that I gave them 2-star stories about instances from work where I was able to drive significant outcomes. And there I specifically weaved in how compassion was very compassion was what kind of
the element, the core tenet behind those.
Absolutely. So I don't mind actually sharing one of the stories with you to show how
I'd love to.
that.
Yes, please, let's go for it.
So during my stint in the LAMP fellowship, I was working with a member of parliament from the ruling party, and at that time the triple talaq legislation was being debated. It's the triple talaq legislation essentially was this law that criminalized men from a certain community divorcing their wives instantly.
Correct.
So it was a very controversial legislation at that time, which the member of parliament that I was working for strongly supported. And I had to work on it and provide pointers that she could use in parliament to advocate for its criminalization.
Understood.
So to me personally, it was a difficult issue to work on because there's just so many moral conundrums involved in this. And I am someone who wanted to be very, very respectful of that community and their practices. So just because we were addressing a certain issue that in my mind had to do more with women empowerment, I did not want to be disrespectful of the community at all. Understood. So for that's where I think just the desire to do that came from a sense of compassion. So in the social climate there, I actually remained steadfast, and the kind of information that I used to put into my research were hard facts that spoke more to women empowerment, and at no point saying anything about the community in question.
Understood.
So because of that, I think my conscience was clear at the end of the day. While at the same time, I was able to provide very impactful research that, in some small way, contributed to making this legislation a reality and perhaps making the lives of several women from that community better. So,
Damn. Okay, so this is completely weaving in your personal beliefs, your personal
yeah,
feelings, if I may, about it, and then navigating how do I actually do the job that will be impactful without disrespecting a certain community and showing that
absolutely.
compassion in that job. That's incredible. Um Makes me actually want to know the second story as well, but we'll leave that as a secret for people who want to contact you and ask you specifically on how
Sure,
you
feel
addressed
free.
it. Um, there were 3 video prompts. Do you
Yes.
remember? So, the structure, if I remember correctly from Yale, is
Mhm.
that you get 30 seconds to prepare for each of the two with 60 seconds to respond to it. And a
Yes.
third one is, I think, 60 seconds to prepare and 90 seconds to respond. Uh, each question is unique for every student. So, do you
Hmm.
recall the nature of some of these questions?
Um, I don't remember exactly what question I got when I was responding because I'd done a lot of practice questions. So
Understood.
ultimately, I mean, I guess that's also my tip to offer: do a lot of practice.
Got it.
But if I recall correctly, on one of them, they give you a statement
Yeah.
and they require you to form an opinion about it and justify that opinion, whether
Okay.
you agree or disagree with that statement.
Yeah.
The second one was a typical behavioral question where they ask you, tell me about a time when you say displayed leadership skills.
Yeah.
The third format I don't recall very well. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry about
That's
that.
fine. That's fine. But I think the key thing here is I don't think they necessarily try and see if your answer is correct or incorrect. What they try and
Yes.
see is, can you think quickly on your feet, and can
Hmm.
you structure your response clearly enough within that given
Yes.
time frame, so that
Yes.
anybody listening can understand it. For instance, in the first one where you're supposed to either provide your opinion and then justify it, have you done that in a meaningful enough way, but then
Yes.
also provided yourself a counter argument as to why someone may argue against it, but then giving your conclusion. And for the other ones, in your star format, if you may, or presenting a
Yes.
situation, telling what you did in response and what the results were. So, for anybody that wants to do it, listen to Aishwarya. Please prepare a lot, practice a lot. I tell all of my students, by the way, even in the lead up to all of these video prompts or otherwise, get yourself on camera, just record yourself, record
Absolutely.
yourself,
Yeah.
record yourself, record yourself till
Yes.
you get to a point where you've responded and you know that you're not doing awkward things as well. Because half of it, for people who are not familiar, is they turn on the camera and they're like, oh shit, am I doing everything right? They're looking at themselves as opposed to just thinking about what needs to be responded to. Good. Is there anything that you remember from Yale that you want to highlight, that you thought was amazing, that we haven't already covered?
Absolutely. So, one, they have a behavioral assessment as well as part of their application, which I found was a very interesting test.
Yeah.
Um, the best thing about it is you don't know whether you're getting it right or wrong, unlike the GMAT or the GRE, where there's only one right answer.
Yeah.
Um, but that's meant to test who you are as an individual, who
Yeah.
you are as a leader.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're meant to choose between two options as to, in a particular scenario, which one would you do? What would
Yeah.
you be?
Yeah.
Of course, some of them are very easy. The answer is obvious. Some of them aren't, and that's something I personally really enjoyed because I feel like I learned a lot of things about myself. So I love that about the Yale process. It just showed me how they value who you are as a person, and me being someone who just likes being with such wholesome people, I guess that also partly told me that this was a good school for me. The second part of it has to do with this is part of the interview experience.
Hmm?
They have a very interesting question where they ask you to submit your favorite quotation beforehand.
Okay.
And during the interview, they ask you to talk about why you picked that quotation and what its relevance in your life has been.
What quote did you
Um,
pick?
I picked a quote by Robert Frost. It
Okay.
goes, "The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep.
Okay.
Miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep."
Damn.
Um,
Okay.
it, it's a quote that I learned in fifth standard. My mother taught it to me when I was speaking in an elocution competition.
Right.
And so I was a morning person in college, and I would wake up at 2, 3 a.m. to prepare for my engineering entrances. And
Right.
when my roommates would be asleep, this was the quote that I tell myself to push myself to get out of bed. So I guess it's just been part of my life in several segments. Sometimes when the going gets tough, it's the quote that keeps me going. So I love that Yale asked me about that.
Damn.
It was an opportunity to show this vulnerable side of myself, which I feel was quite a game changer in the interview.
And it seems like it's you've replicated that success across multiple different schools. Congratulations on ton of admits. Congratulations on making this decision. I hope with your help we're able to battle COVID as well. So thank you for doing your part on that one in India. And I hope you get to go to school. It is a muted experience for most of them. I know many students who've gone, who are doing it online or are doing it partially online versus in class. I really hope for all of the MBA students going in that they get the full in-class experience, because it is amazing.
Absolutely.
Is there anything you want to leave in terms of advice for Indian students applying to business schools to replicate the success that you had?
Got it. The first thing is go beyond just getting to know the school through their website. I actually encourage applicants to sign up for the webinars that the school is hosting, sign up for office hours that the admissions committee is doing, actually go on LinkedIn and cold message a few students who go to that school.
Yeah.
I understand that it can be difficult for Indians because we don't network actively as part of our undergrad or even as part of our professional workspace.
Yeah.
But that said, it's extremely important to this process.
Yeah.
One, because when you actually speak to people who are part of the school and its community, it gives you insights that just reading the website doesn't.
Yeah.
And when you can present these insights in your interview and in your application, it actually goes a long way in showing the school that you are a committed applicant.
Yeah.
The second part of it is, if you are interacting with the admissions office specifically beforehand, make sure that you go prepared with don't just ask run-of-the-mill questions that you can just Google and find the answers to.
Exactly.
Ask very insightful questions, do
Yeah.
your research, because that's an opportunity for you to set an impression on them even before you hit your application.
Yeah.
I feel like admissions officers keep you in mind. I strongly felt that about my Yale admissions process.
They
So
do keep notes,
definitely
by the way.
advice.
They have a file on each candidate, just saying, of all the interactions also.
I did not know that.
Yep.
But yes, I think as Indian applicants, we need to go out of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because it really pays off in the end.
Yeah, no, both incredible pieces of advice. It's the process that we follow. I make sure people talk to at least 5 students. There is a technique I teach called asking advanced questions, which is based on research and asking opinions and advice that almost is 2 steps beyond just what the research informs. So it feels insightful. You are incredibly wise beyond your years for the way you think and the gutsy decisions you make. And I congratulate you for all your success. If anybody wants to get into ISB, Duke, Cornell, Yale, whichever school you want to get into, just contact Aishwarya. Make sure you donate to the fund so that she can do more for people suffering through COVID. Thank you so much, Aishwarya, for doing this. I appreciate you coming and helping everybody else. Cheers. Bye.